David Tulis.
The problem with mixed economies is that they really don't satisfy anybody. They don't satisfy the straight socialist who wants effectively government ownership of all and government management of every detail, and of course the broad swaths of the economy. And mixed economies don't satisfy the marketplace itself. All those actors in the free market who can't really get to where they want to go. They can't really make ends meet in the marketplace because there are players in their fields who have the advantage. You have a subsidy for their toils, a subvention. In French, the word subsidy is subvention, which is subvention, which is made up of sub, under, and vent. V-E-N-T is wind. Le vent in French is the wind. And so you have wind underneath you is a subvention as a subsidy. So in every market where you have players who have guarantees of their debts or whose customers can have tax write-offs for what they buy from that particular provider, you have a playing field that's not even. And so once you have one player who gets a benefit, all the other players want to get that too. And so you have that first federal dollar, that first state dollar, drawing the interest of all the players of a particular market, let's say housing, into a certain concept, into a certain paradigm, a pattern, if you will. And that pattern is dependent on continuing aid or continuing backing or continuing cheap credit. And you don't have a free market. Who is most hurt in this situation? Who profits the most when you have a mixed economy, a half in free market and half in progressive theory, statist theory market? Well, those who are the best are those who are connected, those who know how the system works, those who have advisors, those who have lobbyists. They generally, as a class, do better. And who does the least well? Well, those who are poor and those who are ignorant. Those who are ignorant don't know how the system works, unable to game the system much except for maybe having that uncle who's getting SSI, though he's quite fit at 52. This person is the loser. And those who are the poor are the most affected because they can't find the things they need. Let's say housing. There's a story this morning in the Time Free Press about the housing market. The mayor is showcasing affordable housing efforts, and these are in a lot of ways commendable because Andy Burke, the mayor, is just looking and dealing with things as they are, and there's not a moral argument he makes either way. It's just, well, here we have people doing something, and these houses are said to be affordable, and they're built as cheaply as possible, and we're hoping to get people in houses who can't otherwise afford them. And we can say in a way, bravo, but there is quote affordable housing, quote or unquote, and then there is genuinely free market affordable housing in which the poor people and the forgotten ones, the homeless, they will be able to afford housing, and that's a free market. We don't have that in Chattanooga, and we don't have that in Hamilton County because we don't want poor people to have houses, and we don't want homeless people to be able to afford their own level of subsistence dwelling. We don't want to have that. And the reason we don't want to have that is because we are intelligent. We believe in public health, safety, and welfare. We believe in regulation. We believe in standards. And the standards that we want to see imposed are ours. And we simply can't bear the idea raised by Mr. Long with the candidates for mayor, the idea of there being a place where poor people who are too poor even to afford they would look at a $25,000 income as fabulously rich. And these are the poor people who are being served by those in this affordable housing market, this sort of unreal market that is boosted by subvention, right? By the wind from underneath that comes up and cheers the smiling face of Luther Jenkins, who's quoted in the story, an 82-year-old man. He was aided by a busload of Habitat for Humanity volunteers in Bushtown, and is very glad to have had the help. They put their heart in it, he tells the Time Free Press. And there was some painting done at his house. There was a porch that was improved, and some other jobs were made. And the money that came for that is here's the wind, right? Here's this cheerful breeze from underneath that lifts up lifts up people, individuals, organizations such as CNE, and the mayor. Mayor Burke is lifted up also. And here, in this case, the detail in the story is it's a $4,900 federal community development block grant allotment, and that some of that is used to help Mr. Jenkins. Now, no one resents him having that support, but we want to look at the larger picture. How can we have a sustainable economy, a real marketplace when we have this sort of living where the poor, the really poor people can't have houses at all because of the way that police officers have with vagrants, as they're called. Their encampments are torn down. There's no way they can establish any kind of capital base in Chattanooga, and they are effectively nomads, drifters, hobos, and homeless people. They're the large category of people that this affordable housing story completely ignores. And because we have affordable housing in quotes in Chattanooga, we can't envision, none of us can envision a market where the housing is so bad, right, so shabby, that people who are homeless could afford to live there. Right? That's a that's a situation where you really almost don't have a landlord, but you have someone who's made his own place. But we can't envision the idea of anyone making his own place, because that person then would have a structure that would be made apart from regulation, right? Apart from ISO, apart from standards, all of which are in the controlled economy that's the housing market. Those are all things that add cost. Every rule, every nice notion of a man in a suit who drives a nice car and has a direct deposit that he makes, that makes that house that he's touching down, all those houses downstream that he's touching by his rules, houses less affordable. So we're talking about houses in this story that are affordable, and they are $120,000. What about the $500 house? Where are those? Where is the $500 house? That's affordable. Now, we've talked about this question before, and it came up in the mayor's campaign, and only one candidate even got close to talking about that, and that candidate is Chris Long. He's a builder, and though he had a campaign that seemed kind of annoying, perhaps in some of the ways he presented himself, he had a right idea about this area, and he had a half-hearted attempt to propose what I have been working on as a concept for some time, and that is that your shantytown is my housing free trade zone. There will be a free trade zone in housing in a part of Chattanooga. You can read about this at Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. And the idea there is that there are no standards, right? There is no housing standard, and the builders are the homeless people themselves. They are allowed to build, free to build whatever they want. And the clincher argument that Chris did not put into his proposal, the clincher argument is that from this unwanted tax seized land, and we have a call. This is David Tulis.
Hi, it's Martina Guilfoyle.
Yes, hi, Martina Guilfoyle. Thanks for calling. We are glad you're here. We are talking to my listener now with the CEO of Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise. And thanks for calling, Martina. Tell my listener a little bit about what your work in this. We're talking about the question of affordable housing. And CNE is kind of half in the free market and half in the progressive government market. What is it that you're doing in the direction of affordable housing, Martina?
Well, we're creating actual income restricted units, and then we're also investing in neighborhoods and developing market rate housing as part of an overall neighborhood revitalization strategy.
What does market rate housing mean? What is that? How is that defined?
It's whatever the market will bear in terms of rents. So the Maybell that we just had the grand opening on, our rents range from about $540 on the income restricted all the way up to about $875 for one bedroom based on square footage. So with the goal being that over time, we feel like we're kind of pushing the market a little bit right now, but based on construction costs, that's what we have to charge. But over time, we'll have the luxury of not having to raise our rents And because we own the building, we can manage it over the long term and bring affordability to the market.
Well, how long are these restrictions on your rents imposed upon C&E?
20 years.
Okay, so for 20 years you're under sort of price control, and that's because these are rules that came with the money that you received from the government to build these apartment complexes? Right.
It's federal dollars, and federal dollars dictate that the affordability is for a 20-year period.
And how is affordability as an idea, as a pricing level, how is that established?
It's all done at a federal level. They look at the median income and the fair market housing rents, and then we're sent on an annual basis what the income restrictions are and what the rent levels are. And the rent includes a utility allowance, so you have to back out, and then they tell you what the utility costs are, and you have to figure that out, and then you figure out what the net rent is. So someone will only pay about 30% of their income for rent and utilities.
Now, the people who live here, they have to show certain limits on their income or gross receipts.
Yes, income, and that's verified through tax returns and pay stubs.
And how many people does C&E have now as renters in Chattanooga?
We have 27 income restricted units out of a portfolio of about 82 units so far.
And the other units are, what are they about? Are they houses? Are they duplexes, triplexes? What do they look like?
Yeah, we have a variety. We have some single family houses, and we have over on 5th Street, we have 3 historic mansion looking buildings that have 1-bedroom and studio units, and 8 of those are, 12 of those, I'm sorry, are income restricted, and 8 are market rate. And then we have a couple of 4plexes, and then the rest are single family.
Now, C&E has a sort of civic mission, is that right?
Yes, we're a
Martina,
nonprofit.
You're a nonprofit organization, and you've been. I think your organization was founded by Bob Corker when he was mayor. About that time.
Yeah, actually, before he was mayor, he and Maybelle Hurley and a couple of, actually a bunch of other civic leaders, as part of the Vision 2000, looked at how do we improve Chattanooga, and one of the areas that everyone was interested in was alleviating substandard housing, and that's how C&E was born.
Well, it seems like what we need to have in Chattanooga, Martina, maybe is more substandard housing, because there are people who are genuinely poor and who are beneath beneath the view of those who would be customers, prospective customers in the affordable housing category that you have your price restricted, income restricted units. And what about those people that are sort of off the radar in this official narrative of where the market price is or should be in Chattanooga?
I'm laughing because I've had this conversation repeatedly. We talk about substandard housing, and you're right. If your point is that it serves a purpose, because we've seen people that are living in homes that are $400 a month and they're substandard, but where are they going to go? And so I always fall on the side of, while I'm a huge housing advocate, and I would love every home in Chattanooga to meet basic safety and health standards, knowing that that's probably not going to happen, especially given any federal dollars. And one of the other challenges is, when you look at certain neighborhoods, once you pay any sort of debt service, your property taxes and insurance, there's no money left over, and your rents are capped basically based on what you can get in the marketplace. So it really creates this very difficult economic environment of how do you improve housing when the market caps it just based on the condition of the overall neighborhood and the rents. So that's why C&E goes in and doesn't just build housing. We look at how do we improve the entire neighborhood to bring investment and then help rise everybody up in that process.
Right.
So,
but when you're rising up people in that process, though,
I'm sorry.
When you're rising people up in that process, though, making things more valuable, that makes the price go up. And if the concern is higher prices and more valuation and so on, that's fine, but it doesn't keep in mind, it doesn't have in view the poor people who would look at a $500 annual income or a $1,000 annual income as a boon if they could just get it. I mean, there are a lot of people who just are denied housing entirely because we don't have a free trade zone in housing. Do you remember did you follow the mayoral debate very closely, Martina? The mayor's race?
Well, I attended one of the debates.
Okay. Well, I attended a couple. And remember, Chris Long was the kind of the last candidate, the builder. He had an idea that he mentioned kind of in a sputtering fashion at the UTC forum, in which there was effectively a free trade zone in housing where an encampment, or what I call a shantytown, the shantytown concept. And he was trying to find a way to help people who really need housing too. But who don't really have an income, and they need housing. And of course, you're aware of the tiny housing concept is being used elsewhere in the country to give homeless people a place to stay. But each one of those is $5,000 or so to build one. So that's kind of what I'm asking about the fact that we have this controlled economy in which you're a part, working at the bottom side of it, but then you've got this huge hole beneath you or on the side of you where these other people are, who can't afford housing at all, and there's no housing available for them.
Yeah, well, I think what you're talking about is is there a moral imperative in our society where people should be guaranteed housing? Because in a free market, like what you're talking about, it's supply and demand, and can you afford what the market is pricing it at, and many people can't. And I don't think you would have to reallocate all sorts of federal dollars in order to provide housing for everybody. And I mean,
is anybody proposing that?
I'm more of course, progressive, that people should have a decent place to live.
Well, are you on that side that says that there's almost a right to housing? Is that where you? Well, your organization stands?
I think that everybody should have the opportunity to have an affordable place to live. And so when you look at, you have all the continuum from homeless folks for a variety of reasons why they're homeless to people that work really hard and just don't make enough money to support a rent payment, or they're capped at what they can afford. If you're making minimum wage, obviously you can afford a lot less than somebody who's making $100,000 a year.
Yeah, and you need to find.
We don't have a lot of housing, to your point, for people that are earning minimum wage.
Right. We need to have dumps. We need to have rooms for rent. We need to have, as in the late 1800s, there were houses where were just boarding houses where people rented a room.
It's interesting because we looked at that model,
yes.
Especially for seniors. The statistic is 8,000 people a day, boomers are retiring, and the average Social Security income is $1,325. So in my mind, where are people that are earning $1,300 a month going to live? You can't afford a mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, and then food on the table. So our boarding house type places, can they be reinvented as a housing affordable housing option for people? And then I also think it would help improve isolation that a lot of older people suffer from. So
is there
that's one reason why, there's this proliferation of studio apartments on the market now, because what people are interested in is having a place to sleep that they can afford. So in Chattanooga, there's a lot of studio apartments that are being built.
Is C&E thinking in this direction?
Than even a boarding house.
Well, let me ask you this. Is C&E in any official capacity or action, or are members of his board thinking in the direction of this boarding house model where the man who has, the man who can't afford $500 rent or $400 rent, where he could go, the divorcee or the man who's just out of high school and is making his way in the world, or the young woman with her child, she's by herself, she could be able to live in a house like that under the supervision of a matron, let's say, as in the O. Henry stories. What is there any prospect of that happening or coming from C&E here in Chattanooga?
We did do, I looked at it for seniors, for people that are retiring. I have not looked at it for the overall market, other than building studios. So no, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't look at it in the future. It's, one of the challenges, and you've probably heard this, that I think the other challenge that we have is, and you can talk to any realtor about this, HGTV has made it really difficult because people want what they want, and they want something a lot more than what they can afford. And so there's this mismatch of, but I don't want to live in that. I want something different. Well, how are you going to get to someplace different than your need is job training or increased income? And, you know, so we come up against that in our work all the time.
Martina Guilfoyle of C&E, you are the CEO of Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Martina Guilfoyle about the housing sector in Chattanooga and where the level is of affordability. It seems in some ways in the market analysis higher than it could be because there are many people left out. C&E is receiving federal money and other money to help lower income folks. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7